What a great pleasure it is to welcome to What's Next Dov Girnun, who is the founder and CEO of Merchant Capital. Now, Dov Girnun I describe him, and many others describe him as well, as a disruptive innovator. He is the founder and the CEO of Merchant Capital, an entrepreneur, and a man who started Merchant Capital back in 2012 with a startup funding amount of 3 million rands. And today they've, 12 years later, they've done so incredibly well. And since then, this Johannesburg fintech company has enabled the growth of South African SMEs by providing over 10 billion rands worth of quick, simple access to unsecured working capital. We know how difficult it is for SMEs to get funding in those early stages. Now, Merchant Capital, as I said, has been in business for 12 years. And all of this funding is quite impressive. Welcome to you, firstly, and it's really a great pleasure to have you on What's Next, Dov.
Thank you, Aki, and really appreciate the warm, hospitable welcome. It's a great introduction, and I'm really looking forward to this discussion.
Yeah, no, listen, I'm looking forward to it as well. I mean, can you, before we get going, take us back 12 years ago? I mean, what inspired you to start Merchant Capital? What fueled your purpose all those years back?
So I think really the founding principle was, how do we help entrepreneurs and SMEs here in South Africa get access to the working capital that they need in the early stages of business? And I think myself and my co-founders, being entrepreneurs ourselves, had kind of experienced firsthand how difficult it was for entrepreneurs in South Africa and globally. It's not a uniquely South African problem, to get access to the growth capital that they need in those early stages. And so really the product or the business was founded with us trying to solve a real world problem, but a problem that we had experienced personally and intrinsically, and really had been through that. So I think we say it on our website, I'm not sure if it's there anymore, but we say the business was founded by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs. And I think that's what really differentiates us, is that we, really understand the pain, struggles, difficulties, roller coaster, emotional, mentally, physically, psychologically, what it takes to be a successful entrepreneur. And we were hoping to try and solve one aspect of that. And it's a very important aspect, is that how do you get easy access to this growth capital in the early stages?
And I guess what you've done now is you've taken the difficulties that you faced 12 years ago, you've replicated into your business, because that's now your purpose and your passion in your business, to help unlock value for other entrepreneurs. And I guess that, when you talk about where you started 12 years ago, and it sounds to me like there's a lot of passion that you had to start this business, but it must have been pretty tough. Can you remember any anecdotes back in those days and the struggles that you faced, trying to get the buy-in from people? And 3 million rand is a considerable amount of money, but to provide that capital to other SMEs, is also difficult, because it's not a lot of money in the bigger scheme of things. But today you've grown to a very successful business, which we're going to unpack. But take us through those difficult years as an entrepreneur. What are the biggest challenges that you faced?
So, Aki, I mean, you asked me to recount some stories of the difficult times in the early days. Unfortunately, I don't think we got enough time, because I would need 2 days to recount all those stories. And a lot of them are really great stories. And personally, I love telling those stories, because it reminds me, and it reminds my team, of kind of where we've come from. But one story that kind of rings to mind, because you talk about the 3 million rand. So I was actually working for someone in 2012, and he had been my boss for 5 or 6 years, and he kind of taught me everything I know now about leadership and building a business. And at the end of 2012, when I decided that I wanted to go alone and really start something and switch the lights on, as I like to say, I went to him as my first kind of pitch as an investor. And I'll never forget the conversation. I said, his name was Greg, and I said, Greg, I've got this idea. It's in the US. It's really a big, successful business in the US. It doesn't exist in South Africa, but I think it would be relevant and there would be applicability here in this market. And I pitched him on the idea, and he said to me exactly like this, verbatim. He said, Dov, I really like you. You are a great guy. I think you'll be a successful entrepreneur. I don't love the idea. I'm not in. I'm not sold. And like a typical entrepreneur, I said to him, Greg, hold that thought. You're entitled to think what you want to think. I'm going to come back to you. And I kind of went away, and then, I won't bore you with the details, but I ended up going to the US and making my business to understand everything about this business, everything about this product. I spoke to anyone and everyone who would speak to me. And after a couple of weeks, I came back and I'd actually found a partner in the US who was one of the leading providers of this product as our kind of, not an equity, as more of a strategic partner. I went back to Greg and I said, listen, I have the Manchester City of this industry as my partner. Are you interested? He was like, Dov, I have no idea how you did that, but I'm in. And that's kind of how we struck the deal, and he put the first 3 million rand into the business.
It's a good thing you said the Manchester City, because if you said Manchester United, it would have brought a totally different meaning to the whole conversation, right?
I've unfortunately, my two young boys support Man United, and I've given up. I'm just saying to them, boys, it's time to start supporting winners. It's very difficult being a Man United supporter. So I chose Man City because of their track record.
Oh, amazing. Oh, what an inspirational start to Merchant Capital, Dov. And when I'm listening to you and hearing you talk about the company, you talk about it with a great deal of passion, but you've basically replicated that passion not only into your organization, but into everybody that works in the organization as well, because it's so important to understand the mindset of an entrepreneur, what challenges they face. And I'm interested to understand, when you went to the US and you looked at the other company you mentioned and you compared that to South African entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship in Africa as a whole, because they say that, and I talk to some entrepreneurs that, live abroad and are based here in South Africa, and they say that entrepreneurship on the continent is very different to anywhere else in the world. There's a certain spirit that is different to anywhere else in the world. So talk to me about that South African entrepreneurial spirit that keeps Merchant Capital inspired and motivated to serve SMEs, because we know and you know that SMEs are the basis of this economy. If it wasn't for the SMEs, who employ a large portion of the economy and contribute a big percentage to this economy, we wouldn't have an economy.
Completely agree. And I think it's, something that I've spoken about previously, Aki, is that I am personally inspired every single day because, I get to hear the stories and the trials and tribulations of these entrepreneurs who are the businesses that we have funded or not funded or helped or not helped, around their stories and their resilience and their persistence and the grit that South African entrepreneurs have. So I want to answer that in two ways. The first one is the 95 odd staff that we have in Merchant Capital. And I can safely say that, maybe 100% is pushing it, but 98% of those people wake up every single morning and come to the Merchant Capital office who are driven by the North Star and the value and the mission that drives us. And that is, how do we help, as Merchant Capital, entrepreneurs in South Africa prosper and grow? And that kind of trumps everything, because that is the core culture, the core value. It's the North Star of our business. And when times are tough, or when people are stressed, or when the performance culture is getting a little bit much, they always are able to go back to that North Star. And when they leave here at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock or 7 p.m. and they go back home, they feel that I personally made a difference in someone's life. I helped an entrepreneur. And by helping that entrepreneur, you've got this incredible multiplier of effect. Across our businesses, across the 50,000 businesses that we funded, typically they employ an average of 8 or more people. If you think about it, we're helping that business prosper and grow. Those 8 people have a family of 2 or 4, and you just get this incredible multiplier effect. So that passion is cascaded and embedded into our business and into our people every single day. And that is then cascaded into the way we deal with the merchants that we fund. So that's the first way I want to answer it. The second is going back to my earlier point about South African entrepreneurs. And you may have seen recently, I've just had the privilege of completing an executive education program at Harvard Business School. And it was a 3-year program. And I spent 3 years on this program, where I spent a month every year in Boston, so on the campus. And I was surrounded by 150 other hugely successful entrepreneurs who were founders of business or second or third generation businesses and family businesses. And Aki, when I arrived there, I felt a little bit anxious and intimidated, because here was Dov, this little guy from Joburg, kind of on this global stage, at Harvard Business School with, undoubtedly the most successful entrepreneurs globally. How am I going to compete? Do I have the right to enter this room or have a seat at this table? And I felt quite intimidated. And what the net result of that is 3 years later, I was probably in the bottom 5 or 10% from a wealth perspective. And that's just because the South African market is small, the currency is weak if you're comparing, the US or Brazil or India or whatever. But what I figured out, and without sounding complacent at all, is that I felt I was in the top 10% of ability. And very often I would be having conversations with my peers and colleagues there, and they would be asking me questions that I would say, but you're leading $1 billion business. How do you not understand this concept? And it kind of dawned on me that as a South African entrepreneur, we are exposed to such a diverse set of challenges that we have to overcome, that actually we can punch above our weight and compete as entrepreneurs on a global scale. And I want to tell this to anyone who will listen. So I've come back, I graduated in April of this year, and since I've been back from the 1st of May, I've been trying to tell every entrepreneur in South Africa that, guys, stop underestimating yourselves, because I now have demonstrable, objective evidence that at this highest level of Harvard Business School with all these successful entrepreneurs, I was in the top 5 or 10% of ability. And it dawned on me that South African entrepreneurs have this innate ability to compete on a global scale, and we need to stop underestimating ourselves. So I just wanted to get that message that I'm quite passionate about across.
Yeah, I love that. That certainly has inspired me, is that, just believe in ourselves as a country. And I mean, it's amazing. What an amazing experience to be able to go to Boston and to be able to walk around Harvard. I remember many years ago attending a conference there, and the one day I took off and I just wanted to walk around, not study or anything like you've done, but just walk around, and you can feel that something special around that Harvard campus. And I mean, the history that, you look at the successful entrepreneurs that have come out there. What is your biggest learning attending this incredible privileged course for 3 years at Harvard Business School? What was your biggest takeout from that?
Sure, it's a good question, and it wasn't just one. There was a multitude of learnings that I kind of took out, and I guess they're relevant to different people and different businesses. I think the one which I just mentioned is that actually as a South African entrepreneur, yes, we can compete on a global scale. So that is kind of like a given, which I think is important. I would say the second thing was that actually building businesses is around people. And the problems that we would discuss among our cohort and amongst our peers were all people problems. It wasn't the technology. It wasn't the funding you had. It wasn't the shareholding. It was actually how do I, as I continue to scale my business around the world, how do I make sure that I've got the A team? How do I make sure that I'm kind of inspiring my people? How do I keep that North Star? So really is that business is about people. And no matter what business you're in, it may be different products or services or technologies or whatever it is, it's actually about the people that you employ. And it's something that I've always been focused on at Merchant Capital, but I think since coming back or over the 3 years of doing this program, it's something that I've become more acutely focused on. Being the custodian of the culture at Merchant Capital is how do we keep pushing the boundaries? How do we keep the excellence benchmark just going higher and higher and higher, and make Merchant Capital a place where people want to be, who are out of their comfort zone and really believe in the core mission and value statement that we have in empowering entrepreneurs.
That is incredibly inspirational, Dov. Now, let's come back to South African entrepreneurs, and we know the challenges that they face. I mean, we know the trouble that our economy has faced, and of course, COVID didn't do things it didn't make things easier for many entrepreneurs. What kind of problems do South African SMEs and entrepreneurs face, and how does Merchant Capital help solve these needs?
So let's talk about COVID for a second, because obviously that was a 1 in 100 event, which I think stress tested all of our businesses and our resilience and our ability as people, right? And I'll never forget when we went into lockdown, and I can't remember exactly what it was called, but it was kind of lockdown 5, and you had these essential and non-essential businesses. And at that time, our business was about 90% non-essential businesses. So if you just think about it, 90% of the revenue that we had been receiving was just switched off, overnight. And I'll never forget kind of sitting around and talking to my team and my board and shareholders and the rest of the Merchant Capital staff around how we're going to survive this. But what inspired me every day was what these non-essential entrepreneurs and SMEs did in South Africa to survive. So where guys were converting their restaurants into essential kind of like grocery stores, where guys were then pivoting away from making something that they were making into making masks or sanitizers and whatever. And something that I'll never forget is about 2 or 3 months into hard lockdown, we got around the table and we said, how do we help these restaurants restart and kickstart? I don't know if you recall, there was this curbside pickup and then there was only delivery and then all of that. And we launched a product which was called Reboot by Merchant Capital. And essentially, Aki, what we did was we gave every single one of our food and hospitality clients, and there were a few thousand at the time, 100,000 Rand. No terms and conditions. There was no, time frame as to when they had to pay us back. We called it Reboot by Merchant Capital, and we basically put 100 grand into all these guys' bank accounts, and we said, use that money to do a deep cleanse, hire some drivers, get some curbside pickup, and it was incredible to see how that little bit of money, although maybe to some businesses a lot of money, actually started utilizing that and pivoting their strategy and being very entrepreneurial in finding a way to turn that 100 grand into 200 grand and then turn that 200 grand into 300 grand. And I was just blown away and completely inspired by the tenacity, the persistence, the entrepreneurial way of South African entrepreneurs just making a plan. When all the chips were down, and I think that bought us a lot of loyalty because, our concept was that we've been with you guys in the good times and we've both grown and made money together, but now's the bad times and we're going to be your partner in the bad times. And I think that principle, that philosophy, which was completely genuine, really helped us, build some brand equity and some loyalty in a time when everyone else was running for the hills. Everyone else was, running for the just to protect their kind of downside, their risk management. So that was one COVID example that I remember.
If I can just jump in there before you go with the next COVID example, I love that story because it talks to me about belief. You guys had belief in the people that you supply capital to. And I remember that time because I'm an entrepreneur myself. I had a business. I still have a business. And I remember that dark, lonely time in April and May that we were shut down. The cash flow, there was no cash flow. The demands were coming in. But you guys said, no, we believe in you. Here is that, it's almost like a vitamin B shot, here it is, and reinvigorate, re-inject your business. And
Absolutely.
and you're seeing the fruits that injection bore, because a lot of these guys, if they hadn't got that, they wouldn't be around today, right?
Exactly. And just to add to that, one other example that comes to mind is that during COVID, we had a relationship with Discovery, and we were actually working with them on their Discovery Insure product at the time. But then we got chatting to the Discovery Health guys, and I remember them telling us that all of a sudden their general practitioners, so the GPs and kind of the physios and those guys, their revenue had literally just fallen off a cliff. Because if you think about it, nobody was getting sick, and if you were getting sick, everyone was too scared to go sit in the waiting room of a GP, and literally, doctors were not busy because there was no way to treat COVID at the time, right? And Discovery said to us, we've got a real problem. These guys are our bread and butter, and we need to support them. Because of the scheme rules, we can't fund them. Will you collaborate and partner up with us and be our funding partner? And in 6 weeks, we launched a product from cradle to grave, which was called Well by Merchant Capital. We integrated into the back end of the Discovery claims history technology. And we started funding these GPs, chiropractors, dentists, doctors, physiotherapists, etc. And all of a sudden, you started seeing these guys using this working capital to start growing their cash flows, growing their business, doing whatever they needed to do. And Aki, that was a perfect example of being very innovative, agile, malleable, and entrepreneurial. Within 6 weeks, we could co-create this product. Discovery were an incredible partner. They still are a partner in this. And that medical business now accounts for about a third of our total business. So that has grown exponentially, which grew out of COVID. And, it's not my cliche, but there's a cliche that, never waste a crisis or find opportunity in the chaos. And that's exactly what we did as Merchant Capital. We said, guys, this is the cards that we've been dealt. This is the chaos. Let's, instead of just lying down and being beaten on the floor and playing victim mode, let's rather try to find an opportunity. When everyone's running for their hills, let's try to find an opportunity, and let's find a way to be true to our brand, be true to our founding principle, is that we want to try and help these SMEs. And a lot of these doctors are actually SMEs. And again, that was something that was the catalyst. The COVID was the catalyst, and that has now become a massive contributor to our business, and that's continuing to grow day in and day out.
Well, that talks to Merchant Capital understanding the businesses of your clients, and COVID is a classic example. They have a history of success. COVID dealt a hand that really was not, nobody predicted that. But then you look at the history of the business and you tailor a solution around it, and that's exactly talks to what you've been talking about. That once you understand the business, you can tailor that solution and help that business. And it's so interesting that you talk about healthcare. We spoke about retail and food. What kind of other sectors do you guys operate in?
So we initially started focusing predominantly on what we call retail, and that retail would be restaurants and hospitality, hair and beauty, kind of fuel stations, hairdressers, pet shop owners, florists, etc. Because we developed some proprietary technology that allowed us to integrate into the back end of the point of sale system, and that's how we collected our cash advance. Every time a customer swiped their card, we would take a very small fixed percentage in the repayment of the loan. So when that restaurant or hairdresser didn't trade, we didn't collect. And all that happens is that the term of the loan was extended. So I would say for the first 5 or 6 years of our business, that was 90% of our business. And then in the previous 6 years or so, we've now just augmented that product offering to be quite industry-wide. So we now are doing, different segments when it comes to wholesalers, distributors, manufacturers. And I would say the retail side of that business is where we cut our teeth, and it was our bread and butter initially, is probably around 25 or 30% of the business now, whereas the majority, the other 70%, is what we call a business cash advance, which is a generalized business cash advance to any type of business that doesn't need to be retail anymore. So we've grown our product offering. It's still a very focused kind of monolithic product offering, but we've expanded the product offering within the niche that we operate. And we've just been, quite deliberate to be laser focused on doing what we do, but doing it exceptionally well. And that's unsecured cash flow loans to SMEs that are looking for growth capital. And we've been tempted to look at lots of different opportunities, and we have deliberately listened to everybody, but up until now just said no, because we want to be super laser focused. And I think that has served us very well up until now.
Yeah. So how would you describe Merchant Capital? Are you a bank? Are you you're obviously in the financial services industry, and I look at the the SASFAs of the world, but I see you as an alternative lender that
That's
you
exactly
offer
right.
a very niche product. Where do you guys fit into this entire ecosystem?
So it's called a non-bank lender. So we certainly are not a bank. We're not a deposit taking institution. So we don't take deposits. We purely lend unsecured cash flow loans to only businesses. So we only play in the B2B or the SME space. So no consumer. And you mentioned SASFA. So myself and 2 of the founder and CEOs of the 3 largest businesses in this space, which is Merchant Capital, Retail Capital, and Lulaland, 10 years ago, because this was an unregulated space, we said, let's self-regulate ourselves as the largest players. And we got together and created SASFA, which stands for the South African Small Finance Association. And we now have maybe 7 or 8 lenders that we brought on board. And essentially what it is, Aki, is it's a self-regulating governing body. We have a code of conduct that everybody adheres to. And in that code of conduct, it's a self-regulating mechanism. So we say that we will not charge usury rates. We will not over-indebt SMEs. We will not stack. So stacking means that if we get a client that already has one of our competitors' loans, we'll never give that on top. We won't stack it on top because that just causes
that's
big
irresponsible.
issues that's irresponsible. So we've been running the SASFA, which we think has been a great initiative for the past decade. And that really keeps, and then the SME who's lending from a SASFA member, they can download the code of conduct on our website and they will see this guy who I'm engaging or doing business with is governed by this code of conduct. I feel pretty safe that I'm going to be looked after. And I think that's been something that we've been trying to grow over the last decade.
Okay. It's interesting over the years, the discussions I've had with entrepreneurs, and you attend different shows, as I'm sure you do too, is that the one thing that entrepreneurs will tell you is that when they're starting out, they've got an idea, they want to get their businesses, the biggest challenge they face is getting money to start the business. And many experts will tell you that that's the wrong way to start a business, right? Does Merchant Capital help those guys, or is it that you help mostly businesses that are already in business, that have a track record? Who does Merchant Capital finance?
So it's a great question. So just to be clear, we don't do startup funding. So we are not kind of a venture capitalist and our funding is not equity based. It's pure working capital debt. So we don't take equity or put in kind of junior funding. The business typically needs to have 6 to 12 months of trading. So relatively early on in kind of their business life cycle, but not a brand new startup. Aki now decides he wants to be an entrepreneur and he wants to open up a restaurant in Sandton City with no track record. We would say to Aki, come back to us in 6 to 12 months, because we need the previous transactional data, revenue data that actually feeds into our credit model that we've developed and iterated over the last 12 years that allows us to make these very quick, simple, easy credit decisions. So someone who has no track record, who's just an idea, unfortunately, I wish we had a solve for that because there's a massive opportunity there, but that's not the space that we play in. So just to give you a sense, typically the businesses that we fund have been in business for a minimum of 2 years. As I said, it could be 6 to 12 months, but typically 24 months. And typically these businesses are turning over around 50,000 Rand a month. So still relatively small. But as our business has grown and as our acquisition costs have come down, as our cost of funding has come down, we've passed that all on to the customer, or to our merchants as we call them. So our average loan size has grown from 50,000 Rand or even 30,000 Rand when we started a decade ago to now about 400, maybe 450,000 Rand is our average loan size. And we typically have the cash advance repaid within 12 months. So it's typically, it's about an 8.5 month term currently. So it's very short term. But why the product works very well is that once 70 or 75% of that initial advance is paid or repaid, that business automatically qualifies for what we call a re-advance or a top-up. So if we gave them 100 Grand initially and they've paid us back 70 Grand, now we'll give them 120 Grand. And we keep building that facility as the business grows. And Aki, what we've seen, and I could share some case studies that would bring tears to your eyes from a happy tears, is the success stories of how these businesses have used our money to grow their business by 300, 400x. They have literally catapulted the business by using the money. Because what happens is that, and you'll know this as an entrepreneur, and I certainly know it, is that the biggest issue in the early stage in business is that you're growing, you're getting product market fit, you're getting some revenue. Now you want to do something else, you need more money. And now you're on this constant kind of treadmill or hamster wheel where you're growing and then you need to raise more money. You grow. Now what happens with Merchant Capital is once you get into the system and you are growing and using the money responsibly and for growth purposes, almost 2 or 3 times a year, you're guaranteed of getting another advance. So you almost start planning as a business owner your strategic growth plans based on the fact that Merchant Capital is going to give you that 100, 200, 500 Grand every quarter. It takes away the noise of having to worry about, oh, I've got an opportunity that's going to come up. How am I going to raise the money for it? It's almost like you have it, tacitly approved. And what happens is you actually see these entrepreneurs, they become a lot more audacious. They become a lot more expansive in their thinking because they know that the one piece of the puzzle that has been missing is access to easy working capital to grow their business is now kind of taken care of. And they start being more expansive and, as I say, audacious. And that is opening up a new store, hiring new staff, doing a marketing campaign, finding an opportunity on some stock that is maybe discounted. It just gives them the opportunity and the firepower to really grow their business and be quite nimble and quick in their decision-making process.
That is so interesting. And I'm sure that you've got you've got obviously very smart people that look at each application as it comes in. I wanted to ask you, how does one apply? How long does an application take? And how do you determine if a business is a good or a bad business? Because, sometimes a business might come to you and they're already past that point of any chance of survival, right? But you guys have obviously got people who assess the risk and say, okay, we believe in these guys, their track record, they had a bit of a blips there, but, we're going to finance them.
Yeah. So it's kind of broken up into two different buckets. We have something called intuitive credit, which is exactly what you say. That is typically for the bigger, more complex deals. So the north of 1 to 2, maybe 4 or 5 million deals. There you've got to have a set of eyes who understands the business, the industry, the margins looking into it, right? And that would be the intuitive credit bucket. But we have grown significantly on the kind of digital automation side. And we've taken all the data and all the learnings that we've had over the last 12 years, and we've put it into a credit scoring algorithm. And we were doing algorithms in that before, it became fancy to talk about AR or algorithms. And those scorecards are incredibly predictive on the propensity and the ability of this small business owner to repay the cash advance and to have the ability to repay the cash advance. So we have become kind of sector experts in SME credit in all the different industries that we operate. So as a flyaway example, we have funded thousands and thousands of hardware stores, right? And we now know more about hardware stores than probably anyone else in the country. We understand cyclicality, we understand stock cycles, we understand margins, we understand regions, we understand, and all of that has kind of been factored into this credit model that we have developed, which now makes the scoring automated and very responsive. So because very often these business owners that we deal with, they haven't got time. So they are time poor. And to get a very quick answer with as little application or friction in their onboarding process is actually what seals the deal. They're even sometimes happy to pay a slight premium because they know that the headache or the admin of getting access to this product can be significantly less. And we've then done strategic partnerships with, example, Standard Bank and Discovery and a lot of other enterprises in South Africa where we partner up with these businesses. And if they provide us with transactional data, we can unconditionally approve a set of merchants or a set of business owners. So it's a push as opposed to a pull. So these guys are like getting a banner when they log into internet banking, whatever it may be, that says your product has been approved or your facility has been approved. So we've really taken the legwork and the burden and the friction around the application process because we, as entrepreneurs, understand that we would rather these guys be focusing on their business, whether that's grilling chicken, cutting hair, kind of harvesting your crop, whatever that may be. Take away the friction and allow yourself the opportunity to react quickly to what we call emergencies or opportunities where the funds can be used for.
Okay. And Sharia compliance finance, do you guys do that as well?
Absolutely.
Where does that fit into your...
Yeah, so we kind of identified a big gap in the market that there wasn't an unsecured Sharia compliant business loan product globally, actually, but certainly in South Africa. And we had the privilege of partnering up with the Sharia business unit at Standard Bank. We got our product to be Sharia compliant, and we're now servicing a big sector of the market where typically these guys weren't able to consume credit because of the Sharia laws, and we've structured the product in a very smart way that is completely Sharia compliant, and it's opened up a completely new sector for us and for Standard Bank.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And I'm sure you've had a great response to it as well. Dov, when you look at the economy, and I know we're in a period right now, the rand dollar is improving dramatically, the stock market is performing well, interest rates are coming down. We know where South Africa's come from and the difficult financial situation that many, not only consumers and businesses have faced, but I don't know. There's a glimmer of hope, and I'm super excited about the future. How do you see it? And from a merchant capital point of view, where do you see the economy going?
You know what's amazing, Aki, is that we are, and I often say this, a true barometer of sentiment in the country, because we funded all these tens and thousands of SMEs. We can tell you, on a day-by-day basis, if the restaurant trade in Pretoria East, I'm making up an example, is up or down year on year. Like, that's the level of data that we have, because we have such a diversified portfolio of SMEs that we funded. So I think we're a very good barometer to kind of tell you what the temperature is, the real temperature is of the economy, yes, of the SME economy, which we said when we kicked off is the real driving force behind economic activity in South Africa. And we are seeing very positive sentiment. There was obviously the elections and the positive outcome with GNU. There's interest rates coming down. There hasn't been any load shedding. The water crisis seems to be, at bay. And even in the load shedding days, or even in the days when the outcome of the elections were still up in the air, these guys were still trading well, because as I go back, these South African entrepreneurs have the resilience of nothing like I've ever seen before. So now the fact that there's some good news and there's some the sentiment change, we're really seeing a positive uptick in sentiment, and that then translates directly into consumer spending, businesses investing. You've got tourism, you've got, inflation coming down, interest rates coming down. So we, for how long it lasts, who knows? But I think this is the time and the opportunity for, if you are an entrepreneur, to be quite audacious, to be optimistic, to push the boat out a little bit and really invest in your business and the future of the country. It's what we're doing. We're putting our money where our mouth is, and, we out there every day trying to help small businesses in South Africa. And I think it's a message that everybody should, as I said, I don't know how long it lasts, because we know that, South Africa has a habit of sometimes scoring some own goals. But for now, you've got to kind of ride the wave.
It's exciting. Look, as the founder and CEO of Merchant Capital, I'm sure that you keep a very close eye to what happens globally, and you mentioned the US and just how small businesses are in different countries. And it's quite extraordinary when you compare the rules and regulations in different countries, and people say it's easy to do business in this country or that country. If you were the Minister of Small Business in South Africa, what would be the one change that you would make to the laws and regulations to help small businesses better?
I'm not sure what I would do with regards to laws and regulations, but what I would do, and it's something we spoke about earlier, is create some sort of a mechanism where the government could help fund or co-fund some of that early stage equity, startup funding that is needed for these entrepreneurs. Because you have the most remarkable ideas, you have the most remarkable entrepreneurs who could probably execute on those ideas, but nobody's prepared to take that early stage equity risk and provide the startup funding. There's businesses like Merchant Capital and our colleagues and peers who, once you've got some track record, yes, we're going to help you grow. We're going to help you go from, so they need to help them go from 0 to 1. We will help them go from 1 to 2 to 6 to 10. But it's at 0 to 1 where I think the government can play. And if you look at global precedent, what have guys done in the US, the UK, Australia, and Europe? A lot of the government funding is to seed these businesses in the early stage when it's just an idea. So I'm not sure if that's a kind of a regulatory framework or whatever, but yeah.
I love that analogy, and you're spot on. From 0 to 1, that's where the injection needs to happen, and then you guys take care of the process after that. Dov, it's been fantastic chatting to you. I mean, how does one get in touch with Merchant Capital or start the process to get a loan? What does one do? What are the steps?
So the best would be to go onto our website, which is merchantcapital.co.za. And then there's a very sophisticated, slick way for you to be able to get filtered into the right bucket of how we can help you. So it's a very kind of easy onboarding digital process that one could go through. Or if one is a little bit more old school, they could give us a call on the landline and someone would be able to help them. But really, the website would be your landing page and where you want to start, and we would then take it over from there.
Fantastic, Dov. It's been an absolute privilege and pleasure to talk to you and talk to you about your business, your passion, and your organization and what you guys have done. 10 billion in 12 years is a lot of money. Do you have any targets for the next decade? How much money do you want to finance in the next decade? Have you set a target? How many more businesses do you want to go for?
Yeah, we want to double that amount, pretty soon. And, like any business, the growth curve has been exponential in kind of in the last few years. So I would say probably 3 or 4 years ago, we were only at, maybe 4 billion. So the growth has been significant in the last couple of years, and we want to keep that trajectory because we now think we have what it takes to do that. But for me, it's less about the money out the door, and it's more about how many SMEs we can assist, and then the stories, around
Yes.
and that's really where the stimulation comes from. And all of us at Merchant Capital feel the way. We just want to play our part in really help the economic activity through SME funding in South Africa and grow this beloved country into the potential that I think we all know that it has. And that's really the piece that we want to play.
Extraordinary story. 10 billion rands worth of quick, simple access, unsecured capital, 50,000 SMEs, 12 years they did this in, and they continue to change and shift the economy. Dov Girnun, who is the founder and CEO of Merchant Capital, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of What's Next.
Thank you, Aki. I've really enjoyed chatting to you, and good luck with all your entrepreneurial opportunities. I hope they'll go well.
Thank you, sir. Likewise.